quite often in the past month or two. It seems to be, I don't know if this is because there's some alleged sales guru out there talking about this, but the question constantly comes up, hey Dick, should we present or should we be promoting value propositions? And the very term value proposition evolved back in the 80s and 90s from what was at that time a fairly intelligent concept of proposing a legitimate value to the prospect. And back in the 80s, 90s, even the very early 2000s, we didn't have the incredible amount of data at our fingertips like we do today. So the consumer at that time could rely on the salesperson to bring the value. Unfortunately, today, value propositions are typically about logic, the rationale, the reason why someone should do business with us, based totally on the concept of logic. And for those of you that have worked with me and anybody that might choose to watch this at a later point, the fact is people buy based on emotion. People don't buy based on logic. And the concept of value proposition is simply about logic. It's about what makes sense and what are the features and the benefits of your product or your service. But in today's world, the consumer or your plumber or your insurance agent or anybody else that you're calling on, they don't make those decisions based on logic. They make them based on value. People make emotional decisions, which are their buying decisions, and it's often based on pride or fashion or comfort or their habits. It could even be something like vanity or jealousy or the aesthetic value of something. It can even be based on praise. But those that I just mentioned, none of them have anything at all to do with emotion, or excuse me, with logic. They have everything to do with emotion. And I've had some people say to me, well, geez, our customers are really smart. Well, okay, your customer certainly is smart in the sense that they can Google the features and the benefits of whatever you're servicing. But they're not really that savvy when it comes to making decisions based on logic, because they don't make decisions based on logic. There's no question about it. Once the decision has been made from an emotional point, they will then rationalize their buying decision. They'll use the logic to help them convince themselves that they made the right decision, but it always evolves initially from the emotional side of it. Billy, I'm turning it over to you. I'm not sure how I'll know when you are done.
Well, good morning, guys, and thanks, Dick. We'll do our best behind the scenes here to keep things smooth, such as life during COVID and technology. I got this question obviously, with everything going on right now with a lot of these storms in the Gulf, I got this question just recently from one of our CREST members. I just landed a large commercial loss. Why do I need to bring in a partner? One of the things that we always recommend on large losses is to try not to tackle it all yourselves. Many of us, large loss becomes something where we think the results are given and we start planning on the success and the money that comes with that. The problem with that is for those of us who don't do large loss regularly, like a Belfour or like an interstate, it's a little bit out of our game plan and we can make little mistakes, but on a large loss, little mistakes end up having large consequences. So rather than trying to strain ourselves and take the big risk, I like to spread the risk. Having a Wall Street background, one of my big things is how to mitigate risk, how to limit risk. And yes, the reward might not be as great, but in our business, it's not really about hitting home runs or grand slams. It should be about hitting lots of singles and doubles and having your company be successful without having these big holes. The other thing about bringing in a partner on a large loss is that we have to understand going forward, we don't want to do a large loss at the expense of our regular core business model. And that's a really important aspect. Our core business model has to stay intact. Large losses are going to come and go, but if we're doing 20 residential water jobs a month and that's our core business, we don't want to take the chance of getting any of our lead sources upset because we didn't respond to their $3,000 or $4,000 loss. A lot of times there's an expression when those of us who like to eat go to a buffet that our eyes are bigger than our stomachs and we load up the plate only to get back to the table and realize that we can't handle everything we put on our plate. Well, the same thing applies to large loss, but we also want to make sure that we can eat every day as well. So we don't want to strain our company. We have to make sure we have a good balance. So I always recommend to companies, especially if you're doing CAT work, to work with a strategic partner. Find out those things that you're weakest at and make sure you have somebody who can help you out. If you're weak at being able to put really good staff members on your job and handling and managing large loss, hook up with somebody who is much more of a large loss manager, somebody who can really handle that part of it for you, the admin part or the labor part. If you're a guy who's got decent amount of equipment but not enough to handle a large commercial loss like a big hotel, make sure you partner up with somebody who's got a larger equipment inventory. When you try to share assets on a job with other companies, it ends up becoming a lot more of a win-win. You can work synergistically with each other and make sure that you have lots of effort and focus going towards the customer. Again, the single most difficult issue, guys, sometimes is when we think our egos get in the way of our reality. And when our egos are telling us, oh, just do it. This is going to be great for you. You can handle this. We always have to make sure we're much more realistic in the things that we want to pass along, not only to our customers, but to our teams as well. So I always recommend to make sure in the long run that you partner up on a large loss unless you're regularly doing large loss. I'm done. Hopefully Dick will get the message that I'm done and we can move along to the next slide.
I got it, Billy. Let me kill the volume. I was used my cell phone so I can hear you. So I'm logged on, obviously, again. So I guess this one follows great after Bill's discussion about supporting each other in large losses. But I get this question a lot. I probably had this question hundreds and hundreds of times over the past dozen years. But people are calling me often asking me about my large loss training. And back when I did this under Astic Wagner, I did them every couple of weeks around the country. Today, as part of the CREST program, we have a pretty in-depth large loss training event, but our large loss training program really is focused on the prep program. You see the logo on the right side of the screen. The prep program, it's been around for 10 plus years, stands for Priority Response Emergency Planning. And the entire program is a pretty sophisticated pre-disaster program designed for you as the marketer or contractor to put in the hands of your commercial prospects around your community. Everybody from hotels to nursing homes to churches and schools and the daycare centers. And we have a very detailed and a complete repertoire of specific information. I was going to call them dissertations, but we have on the CREST network in the members side volumes upon volumes of detail about marketing to and selling a pre-disaster program to commercial clients. The program is broken up into, and I think, I can't remember exactly, I believe there are like 30 pages worth of sales and marketing information simply just on hotels, and another 20, 30, 40 pages on nursing homes and on churches and so forth. And so when you attend one of our large loss sales training classes, it is focused specifically on that. It's focused on getting you up to speed as quickly as possible on who to see, who not to see. There are some verticals or commercial end users out there that the industry types just aren't particularly conducive to your marketing. And then we teach you what to say, what not to say, how to approach them, what to do and how to say what you should say to the gatekeeper. When you get in front of the decision maker, we talk about specifically how you can present that information to them as well. So you can check that information out on the CREST network, on the members, or both on the member side and the public side, and reach out to Bill or myself if you want to know more about that. So thanks, Billy. I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you, Dick. This one is just a very practical question that doesn't matter if you're doing commercial, residential, any business owner should care about this question. How many hours should I expect my techs to work each week? Obviously, the simple answer is we should expect them to give us 40 hours of work each week, but we all know that from one week to the next, 40 could turn into 60 or 40 could morph down into 20, and we need to be aware of that. If we're expecting our techs to give us 7 days of work because we're nice and thin, but we're busy, and we're just saying, well, these guys should be happy because they're making lots of overtime, we're setting ourselves up for failure. There has to be a balance for all of our technicians between their work life and their home and personal lives. And as an owner of a company, it's our responsibility to strike that balance. We're always going to have two types of technicians. We're going to have the type of technician that we all want and desire, who's 100% for the company and is willing to give you all their effort towards making it a better company, making your projects as good as they can be, and being there 24/7 to help you out. But I can tell you from experience, if you've got guys working 70, 80 hours a week, whether it's 10-hour days for 7 days or just grinding them every day and every night, and maybe they have a half a day or a day off, you're going to burn them out. two things are going to happen. They're going to lose their desire and their hunger because they're just going to be so physically and mentally worn out. And number two, the quality of their work is going to go down. And at the end of the day, the quality of work is the most important factor for you to consider when you're trying to gauge how many hours you can push one of your technicians. If they're, by the time Friday comes around, if they're physically exhausted and they start taking shortcuts and their work product goes down, you could have upwards of half of your work starting to look sloppy and not be at the standards that you're needing and desiring. Now, can you turn around and hold that against your technicians? Some guys do, not understanding that they're the ones who have driven the technicians to that point. On the slow side, I'll address this real briefly. I don't think it's very fair to tell your technicians, well, it's really quiet, so go home. It's 10 o'clock. I'm not paying you. You're going to clock out, but stay by the phone and stay ready. I don't think that's very fair. If you're the type of company that has 3 or 4 technicians and you're only getting 20 hours a week out of all of them, you're probably overstaffed. And I know that sounds crazy because how could you be overstaffed with just 3 or 4 technicians? But if you're only doing 3 or 4 jobs a month or 5 or 6 jobs a month, and you've only got need for them for a couple of days each week, you probably only need 2 guys. But let's talk about the scenario that's far more likely, that we've got 3 or 4 guys and we're trying to handle 20 to 25 projects a month. That's where we have to make a financial decision to invest in our production teams. We can't constantly be expecting and asking our guys to be on call all the time, to be responding all the time at all hours of the day and night, and not to have that significant balance in their home lives. It's a very important mix that we need to make sure we have. Guys, I always say if you're approaching 60 hours a week, you probably need to hire another technician. Remember, most companies in most states require you to pay time and a half for any hours over 40 in a given week. Other companies have special programs with their workers where they're paying them an overtime or a bonus if they're working nights and weekends, which would be in addition to some sort of overtime pay. So usually when you're approaching 60 hours, it's costing you as an employer 70 plus hours to have that one person on call or on working hours. Once you approach 70 hours cost to you, it's definitely worth your while to hire another individual. Yes, it's an overhead cost. Yes, it is locking yourself into a higher staff cost. But the productivity you get from 2 guys working 40 hours as opposed to 1 guy working 60 hours or 70 hours, you get far greater productivity from the 2 guys. So your profit margins on those jobs should be up, your quality should be up, and your ability to handle more work should be up. So usually I like to use the rule of thumb of 60 hours. If you get to 60 hours and your guys are consistently working more than that, consider bringing on another technician. Let's not push them and just say, well, he keeps coming to me saying he's happy with the 70, 80 hours of work. Understand that in the long run, you're not doing what's best for your firm or for your workers. Back to you, Dick.
Thanks, Bill. There we go. How do I qualify sales prospects or marketing prospects? It's amazing to me that when I talk to marketers that, especially for the first time or two, that they don't even know that they should be qualifying their prospects or their clients. Further, they have very little understanding from our industry perspective on how they should go about that. So I want to talk for just a second about the compelling reason that you should be qualifying a prospect. Number one, you only have, from a marketing and sales standpoint, somewhere in the 40 to 50 hours a week range to develop relationships and generate clients and customers and referrals and leads. And when you are caught up in or focused on calling every month on every single property and casualty insurance agent in your market, you're going to run out of time. And then when you add to that every plumber or HVAC or carpet cleaning company, those that don't do drying, you're suddenly looking at hundreds and hundreds of prospects. Most of the markets that I'm aware of around the country have somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 or more insurance agents in their market. And there is no possible way that you can or even should be trying to reach every single one of them. I liken it to going duck hunting, going out in the duck blind, putting on a blindfold yourself, load your shotgun with shot, and then when you hear a duck fly overhead, you aim the gun in the air and pull the trigger. That's the unlikely scenario. You're not going to hit the duck. I mean, 1 in 1,000 possibilities. So it's extremely important that you qualify. I've simplified the process over the years for qualifying. Most of my clients use the methodology of an A prospect. If you want to help remember the A, B, and C, A stands for awesome. B stands for borderline. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, maybe you can convert them. And then C stands for crap. I always get a crack out of people that fall flat on their face and laughing their head off when I tell them that some of the prospects they've been calling on are crap. However, so many of those marketers say to me, well, yeah, I have been calling on upwards of 300 of them, and yet they tell me that only 20 or 30 of them actually send them work or have sent them work in the past 6, 12, 18 months. I even give them, go 18 months out, the past year and a half, how many people? And it always comes back to, well, maybe a grand total of 50 out of 250 or out of 300. I don't know how to say this politely, but I will try. Why in heaven's name, how's that? Why in heaven's name would you continue month after month, year after year, calling on prospects that are quote unquote crap? They have not, nor have they ever, will they ever send you any work. And they'll always give you the reasons if you're bold enough to ask them if they're going to refer you or if they will refer you. They'll tell you things like, I haven't had any losses. Knock on wood, I haven't had any losses. I only refer all our policyholders to Claim Central. I give them the 1-800 number. Well, we don't get involved in claims. My district manager wants us to focus on selling policies, not worrying about the claim. Or we're not allowed to refer anybody. All those kinds of excuses are just that. They're bogus, they're excuses. And the fact is that any insurance agent, if you're calling on them, any insurance agent can refer you. But the reason we never know is because we never ask. Salespeople, marketers don't ask. ASK. We don't ask the hard questions because we're afraid of the hard answers. We're afraid they're going to tell us, no, I can't refer you. And so guess what? The best way to avoid that is just to simply not ask the question. And then we keep on throwing stuff against the wall, hoping that it someday will stick. And those other 250 insurance agents will suddenly start sending us work. There is a very precise methodology for marketing to and calling on your prospects. And one of those things includes getting the guts, the stomach, the stamina to ask the hard questions. And when you get a hard answer that isn't what you want to hear, life goes on. As the saying goes, there's a lot of fish in the pond. Move on to the next person or the next client. Billy?
Thank you, Dick. That was very enlightening. Why do my clients refuse to pay my balance if the insurance company cuts my invoice? Nobody's ever asked this question to me. I'm joking. I literally get 3 or 4 emails a week from CREST clients specifically asking about how they're supposed to handle this. And unfortunately, guys, for just about all of us, this issue does not start at the end of our project when the homeowner gets a check for less than our invoice and we ask them for the balance. This problem starts at the very, very beginning. I'm not speaking for everyone, but I'm speaking for the vast majority of restorers in our industry, especially the independent restorers who do not get their work from programs. If you get your work from programs, you've already signed away your right to bill as you wish and to chase down your money as you wish. You know, most programs give you instructions on how much you're allowed to bill for, what types of line items you're allowed to include, and we kind of make what I like to call a deal with the devil in a way that we are using them as a referral and a marketing tool, for lack of a better term, a lead generation source. And we're also, by saying yes to that, we're saying no to the independence and autonomy to collect our money. But what we do as independents is we go out and we try to do work. And in order to get to yes, very similar to what Dick said before, we never want to hear no. So in order to get to yes, we may say things or infer things that make it easy for the client to make that decision at the end of the job. How many of you go out there and tell the clients, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about any communication with your insurance company. We take care of everything. Or worse, we're not even going to give you the bill. We're going to bill your insurance company directly as long as you sign this authorization. And then they'll even pay us directly as well. Okay, guys, when we do those two things, we're telling the homeowner that they're not obligated for our invoice. Many times that's what we're alleging, and many times that's what we're doing in practice as well. We're not sending the invoice to the client. We're not telling the client that the invoice is their responsibility. The worst thing we're doing is we're saying all those things, but they're signing a work authorization that within the work auth says exactly the opposite. It says that the full responsibility for payment is in the hands of the client. So now we have a legal document we're going to try to enforce, but everything we have said and inferred to the client says that we're not going to make them part of the process. So I always liken it to when we go to doctor's offices. When we go to the doctor's office, doctors have a very similar relationship to what I'm describing our words convey to our clients. We always give the doctor our insurance information. We never, or if rarely, if ever, get a full invoice from our doctor for our services. If we're going to an in-network doctor, we're paying a copay and then we're done. But even if we're going to an out-of-network doctor, many times the doctors will say, I'm going to put it through my insurance and see what they come back with. Most times the insurance company will pay them an amount far lower than what they've invoiced, and our insurance company is done. But then the doctor comes back to us and says, oh, you know what? I'm only going to charge you $100 extra because I got X. That's what homeowners will expect of us. They don't understand our process is not the same. When we say we'll work with insurance, we're no different than a doctor's office saying we'll work with your insurance. So we have to avoid that apparent similarity, because as of today, as much as the insurance companies want us to devolve our industry into that of a doctor's, where it's all in network and out of network coverages, right now it doesn't exist that way, but we're allowing that to happen. So we need to start at the very beginning. We need to make sure the homeowner understands that ultimately, at the end of the day, they are the responsible party, that we do not have a legal contract or obligation to their carrier. We will do our best to help them communicate with their carrier. But no, we should not ever infer or state that we will work directly with their carrier. Now, for some of you, that's going to be a big change in how you do business. And you might think, well, that's going to screw me. I'm not going to get a lot of work. Just think about how much time and effort and money it's costing you right now to do what you're doing right now, not knowing when you submit a bill for $6,000 if you're ever going to collect most, all, or any of that invoice. We have to start thinking a little differently. We have to start operating a little differently. For those of you who have questions about this, please feel free to reach out to me, bill@thecrestnetwork.com, and I can schedule a time to walk you through this. Several of our clients are doing this right now. They are no longer communicating directly with adjusters. They are sending the invoices to the homeowner, making the homeowner submit those invoices to the insurance company. When the insurance company inevitably comes back with all their questions that they have about the invoice, again, the communication is going through the homeowner. We even have a couple of companies that are refusing to speak to the adjusters on the phone. We're making sure that if the adjuster does call, the PM or the person in the office handling that is making sure that they get the homeowner on the phone so that they are part of this process. Is it working? Yes. Anecdotally, it is working. Obviously, the insurance company keeps pushing back, keeps trying to underpay our invoices. But at least this way, we're building a relationship with the client where they don't feel like we are the bad guy. We're helping them collect the money. So we're making the client feel like the client is the one getting screwed by the carrier, not us. So always keep that line of communication open and try to understand that if your client says, well, I'm not paying your bill because you told me at the start you were going to work with my carrier, understand they're not just being jerks at the end. That's basically the byproduct of the process we have set up for them. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Bill. This question surprised me. It's come up several times in the past 4, 5, 6 months. Usually or often it's a few days or a few weeks before one of our clients or somebody that I'm working with knows they're going to be actually doing some sort of a home show booth or a home and garden show event, and they're going to rent a 10 by 10 space, and they're really interested in how can I make that work. Often that investment, if you factor in the employees' time spent at those shows in the booth, as well as the cost of the booth and the setup of the booth, including things like a nice plush carpet in the booth and tables, and some of them go all out with computer and a monitor, and they're displaying or showing something. There is an absolute need to get a legitimate or a positive ROI. If they can't get a good return on their investment, there really isn't any point in having the booth to begin with. A negative ROI it's really never good. Usually there are several mistakes made that we see at every show, and many of you, Bill and I, routinely, at least when the event is happening, go to the experience in Vegas or Tampa or we were going to go to the one in Cincinnati last year, or earlier this year. You know how that worked out. So many times in an effort to maximize their opportunity, I have seen booths, especially those where they're selling a product or products. I have seen them have tables and shelves and ledges loaded with their products, or I have seen them create a backdrop that is so cluttered and so overwhelming with text and so forth that the person walking by the booth, they're going dizzy. The whole goal of a booth is to have a conversation with as many as possible. It's called a touch. I don't mean touch them. I just mean have an exposure to them, have an interaction with them, build or attempt to begin to build a relationship. Some of the things that I have seen people do in a booth is they're so anxious to get in to the show that, and when they find out that all the good booths are taken, they opt to take some booth in the far back corner that gets very little traffic. There's no point in that. Save your money. Don't overload your booth with product. Don't put an 8-foot table across the front of your booth where you stand behind the table. Or even worse, you put the table up and then you put 2 chairs there and you sit down comfortably in those chairs. You should be standing and your table shouldn't be blocking the booth itself. So please, those are some of the simple parts of that. You ought to approach the home show or your booth with the concept or the idea of having a specific goal or specific goals. For example, maybe your goal is as simple as I want to get as many possible people signed up to our giveaway. I want to collect as many business cards as I can possibly collect. Remember, those business cards or those signups generate you contact info. It generates you an email address often, and those are extremely valuable. But you know what I find with so many of those clients that have a booth, even when they get the information, for example, they're going to give away a 30-inch or 32-inch flat screen TV. And so people take the bait, fill in their name, address, phone number, email address in the hopes of winning that. Often a name is drawn, and that's all they ever do to follow up with that potential prospect. They don't email them, or if they do, it's a one-time shot. They don't call them. They don't send them a personal note thanking them for visiting the booth. There's no follow-up whatsoever. And I probably should mention this. They're not, those people walking past your booth, they're not looking to make friends. They are there out of curiosity. They are potential candidates, but how you engage them in conversation by asking them a leading open-end question when they come up to or walk past your booth, that's important to engage them, to reel them in, at least get them to stop for a moment so they can answer your open-ended question. And when they're a little hesitant or their answer isn't real clear, I love the phrase, Should we talk? When you ask the phrase, should we talk? Some people will say, sure. Some people say, no, I'm good. But if they say, sure, it's kind of like the salesperson not wanting to ask a hard question for fear of a hard answer. Can we talk? No, no, no. Or should we talk? No, no, no. I'm good. I'm good. No reason to, and they keep right on walking, or they refuse to take your brochure or your flyer or whatever it is you're handing out. So if you want to develop a great home show booth and make it effective, generate a good ROI, give me a call. We don't, Bill and I don't sell, the CREST network doesn't sell anything related to creating a home show or a home and garden booth, but we can help you with providing good information on how to make it effective. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Dick. It's funny, you mentioned something in there about having a plan, go in there with a certain goal, getting names or leads or whatever. I think that's going to apply to basically every slide and every question we have in every aspect of our business. I mean, go back to my first question about partnering up on a large loss. You should always go into every project with a plan. You should go into every year with a plan. You should go into basically everything we do as our business with a plan. So I really love the idea of committing yourself to having a plan. Why can't I get my crews to keep the trucks and warehouse clean? The short answer is because you don't have a process for it. The longer answer could be 100 reasons, even if you do have a process. Normally, the main reason why trucks and warehouses aren't kept clean is because it's not part of everybody's everyday regimen, or because your guys are working too hard. This goes back to when I talked before about if you're asking a guy to work 60 hours, you have to leave enough time for them to come back and clean out the truck and make sure the equipment is cleaned and restocked on the shelves. You know, guys, very few of us realize this, but in Xactimate, as much as we all like to complain and, you know, have our comments about what Xactimate does to our business and how it's undercutting us, and in many ways it is, but here's something that Xactimate does that a lot of people don't realize. We get paid for an 8-hour day in Xactimate. However, when they build in their formulas, they only build in a total of 5.5 hours of actual work at the job site. The other 2.5 hours are considerations given for things like travel time, breaks on the job, lunch, and equipment setup and takedown, which would include when you get back to your shop, making sure that the guys empty out the truck properly. There is 2.5 hours each day that they are not literally doing the thing in the light item. For instance, if it's remove drywall or remove baseboard, the amount of money you're given assumes an 8-hour day with only 5.5 hours of doing those activities. The other 2.5 hours is for the rest of the activities that you have them on the clock for. So as long as we understand that, we should be making sure that our guys know that part of their job before they clock out is to make sure that everything is back in its place. You know, many of us have heard the expression fire engine ready. It's never good enough to let our guys come back from a job regardless of the time. And I understand sometimes if they show back up at your shop at 2 a.m. and they're wiped out, they're not going to be functioning properly. But 9 times out of 10, they're coming back at 4, 4:30, 5 o'clock to your shop. They have to devote the time to getting that truck and that shop fire engine ready. If you get a call at 10 o'clock at night, you don't want to waste time having them take 45 minutes to an hour to get that truck emptied out with the trash from the previous day, reloaded with clean equipment to get out, because you're promising a certain amount of response time. Let's make sure we can meet that promise by having them come back and constantly stressing and coaching and working on the process of having them put stuff back. So let's make sure we know that they know that that's an obligation. We stress that as part of their job, just like we would stress making sure they wear proper PPE and they do very good containment. Well, the condition of the trucks in the warehouse is the same. And let's also make sure that we're not overworking them, because if we're overworking them and they come back and they're just too exhausted to do this work, guess what? That is on you guys. You have to make sure that we're not pushing them too far. This goes back to what I talked about before. So make it part of the process, but also make sure you understand what you're asking them to do as part of their full day. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Billy. Many marketers and clients that I've coached know that I'm a fanatic about you being different, and specifically being different than your competitor in the marketplace. And even to be more specific than that, being different than the other marketers that are also calling on the same clients. We all know that there are in excess of 7 billion people in our world. There are over 330 million people in the United States. There are over 30 million businesses at least listed or registered in the Info USA, who tracks all businesses. It's going to be a major challenge to be unique or unusual or different. But the fact is, you're not going to be very highly effective unless you're able to create differentiation for yourself as a salesperson or marketer and for the brand that you represent. When you look and act and sound like every other salesperson or marketer, the prospect looks at you with some level of annoyance. Unless you can provide your prospect or your client with a compelling difference between you and all of those other marketers that are parading in and out of their doors, if there's no contrast, then guess what? Bad news for you. You get lumped into the same category as all of the rest of them. One of the very simple ways to separate yourself is to learn how to speak differently. The fact is, differentiation is the single most important aspect of your sales and your marketing effort. If you're not comfortable, if you're unwilling, if you just simply resist learning an elevator speech, and I mean, in this case, it's an elevator speech that's 3 sentences. Hi, my name is Dick with the CREST Network. That's 1 sentence. That's pretty easy for every one of you to memorize your respective name and the respective company you work for. That's a no-brainer. So that means you only have 2 more sentences to learn and to memorize. And people say, well, when I do that, it doesn't sound natural. You're right. It doesn't sound natural. You have to practice. You have to say it over and over and over again so that it no longer sounds canned, but it sounds comfortable and natural, and you don't have to stumble over it because you have it committed to memory. Your elevator speech should include things about your client that demonstrate your credibility and your believability. Just doing that alone helps toward your differentiation. You have to separate yourself from every other marketer, and that can include, it isn't the exclusive, but it can include personal branding. Many of you have heard the story of a marketer here in Florida that was comfortable wearing cowboy boots in Florida. And she was a 20 something and she was comfortable wearing sundresses here in Florida. And I encouraged her to wear a cowboy hat as well, which she was comfortable with because she lived on a horse farm. That's the personal brand. She became known as the cowgirl. And what a great personal brand. The personal brand is one aspect of being different, of considering yourself as separate and unusual and unique from every other marketer. And let me remind you, there are on average in a typical insurance agency about 15 marketers a day going in and out of those insurance agent doors. That's a national statistic. That isn't my number. I was told that through the Insurance Agents Association, and they've tracked it for years, and it still holds true today. Geez, how are you going to demonstrate that you're not the same as everybody else when 15 different people are going in and out of those offices every day? That's number one, extremely important for you to qualify your prospect, which we talked about a few slides back, and also to separate yourself by saying, acting, sounding different than your competitor. Bill?
Thanks, Dick. How can I create a budget for next year? This one always comes up right around this time of year because this is when we should start being able to start making projections for the year to come. Now, in our industry, I've heard all the excuses about, well, there's no way you could possibly budget because we have no way to know. And that is true. We have no way to know what's coming in next year, but that doesn't mean that we should not go forth with the exercise. And I'm going to make this real simple. There's two ways that you can create a budget. And I'm going to give brief explanations for each of them. Should any of you decide you want to entertain the prospect of creating a budget, and I'm encouraging everyone to do so, I'm here to explain it. So just give me a call, drop me an email, and we can walk through step by step. It's actually fairly easy once you have certain information about your company. The first way you could do a budget is what I call break-even budgeting. You can give yourself a threshold of what you need to do to break even for the year. So that's really easy. You figure out your fixed costs, which everybody who's an owner should know what their fixed costs are. That's all the money that's on your P&L statement that's below the line. That's the money you're spending regardless of whether you do any work. Your rent, your utilities, your insurance, things like that. All of your payments on vehicles, things along those lines, your marketing costs, your administrative staff costs. If you know what those numbers are, you add all those together, and that's kind of like what you need to, that's your nut you need to cover. So then you back engineer from there, how many jobs do I need to do to cover that? And that's all well and good. That's a great way to at least give yourself a bare minimum. Now, the way that Dick and I have been talking this whole hour, it's really about having a plan. So this is even better. Let's have a plan. Let's look at what we have been doing. Let's look at what we can pretty much guarantee ourselves to do from a production standpoint. And let's put together what I call a forecast budget. Let's forecast, given the trends of our company. There are a lot of things we need to know, and it's a little more in-depth than break-even budgeting, but it's far more effective in driving your plan. I hate the thought process of, plan for the worst and hope for the best. How about let's plan for reality and work and strive to meet or exceed reality? Planning for the worst sometimes we don't analyze properly what is the worst, and then we put ourselves in a really bad spot. We also don't set expectations high enough. One of the biggest mistakes we all make as owners and as leaders is that we don't ask enough of our people. We don't set the bar high enough. People want to be led, people want to be motivated. So we need to make sure that we do that for them and not just make it easy. So I don't prefer the break even. I really prefer the forecast budget. But this is going to require us knowing some things about our business. We need to know what our average amount of jobs per month is. We need to know what our average job size is. What's our average bill on a residential water damage project? How many of them do we have? And then we also need to know what our average gross profit is. Are we doing our business at 60% profit, or are we doing our business at 80% profit? Knowing those is going to enable us to set a better budget. We also need to have a really good idea of what our marketing trend is. What I mean by marketing trend is, if you're working with Dick, Dick can give you a really good idea and tell you whether or not the efforts of your marketer are better than they were at the beginning of last year, worse than they were at the beginning of last year, or about the same. So then you could forecast saying, well, my effort should be a little bit better because my marketer's been doing better the last few months. So that should result in a better year-over-year number. And then you could add in a reasonable amount of growth to your company and to your budget. Like I said, this is forecasting. So we know we can't be perfect, but we want to set goals that are achievable, but also that are really, really pushing our people to get the best out of them. One of the companies that we work with here at Reliable is up to 35 water damage projects a month. And as a CREST member, they're doing all of this work. They're doing the analysis. They know what their average job size is. They know what their gross profit is. So we're already creating a budget for Reliable for next year that's setting them up to do at least 40 jobs a month. That's not a huge percentage increase. To go from 35 to 40, we're not talking about a big percentage increase, about 12%. But we're still driving. 5 extra jobs is still a drive for the marketers and for the production staff and for the administration staff to be able to handle that. So we're setting that up. But we're not doing it because break even for the company might be 25 projects. But now we're setting the target and the goal at 40. So forecast budgeting is what I would prefer you guys do, because not only is it good for your financial health, it's also good for the psychological health of your employees and your company as well. To me, if you want any drive and desire going into 2021, and if you want any kind of a roadmap and plan, you need to have a budget. And if you need to have a budget and you are a little lost on how you can create that budget, please reach out to me. That's one of the things I really love doing with you guys. And currently, I'm in the process or starting to work on 9 budgets for our CREST members. So there's room for a few more. Please reach out to me and I can certainly assist you in creating those budgets. Thanks, Dick.
Thanks, Bill. Bill, why don't you wrap this up?
Guys, on behalf of Dick, myself, and everyone here at the CREST Network, I really want to thank you for not only joining us today, but for your continued support throughout the year. We know and we appreciate how tough it's been for all of you throughout this year, dealing with some unprecedented hesitances, interruptions, and difficulties with your business life and your personal lives. And we're so proud and glad that we could be here to assist you in any way that we have. And we continue to be here for anything that you guys need. I can't thank you enough for all your time. And on behalf of everyone, thank you so much. Continued success and have a great day.
Thank you.